Welcome back to This Day in Irish History. I'm your host, Raymond Welsh. Before we dive into today's story, if you'd like to explore other significant events that happened on this day in Irish history, visit thisdayirishhistory.com. The link is in the episode description. Now, let's journey back to April 23rd, 1014, when the Battle of Clontarf unfolded, one of the most iconic and mythologized battles in Irish history, often seen as a clash that broke Viking power on the island, but in truth was far more complex and nuanced. The Battle of Clontarf took place on Good Friday, just outside the walls of Dublin, along the banks of the River Tolka. It was the culmination of decades of shifting alliances, feuds, and rival claims to power across the island. At the centre of it all stood Brian Boru, High King of Ireland, ruler of Munster, and the first Irish monarch to successfully unite much of the island under a single banner, at least in theory. Born into the Dalgecaist dynasty in what is now County Clare, Brian had risen from the status of provincial king to become the dominant political force in Ireland by the turn of the millennium. But Brian's authority was not without challenge. Chief among his rivals was Máel Mórda Mac Murchada, King of Leinster, who resented Brian's overlordship. To strengthen his rebellion, Máel Mórda forged an alliance with Sigtrygg Silkbeard, the Norse Gael king of Dublin, and recruited Viking mercenaries from across the Irish Sea, including warriors from the Orkney and Isle of Man. The resulting coalition, made up of both Irish and Norse elements, stood in opposition to Brian's forces, which were drawn primarily from Munster and Connaught, and led in part by his son, Mercenaries. At dawn on April the 23rd, the two armies met at Clontarf. What followed was a brutal, day-long struggle. Clashing swords, battle cries, and the sounds of death rang out across the fields as the tide quite literally played a role. The incoming waters of Dublin Bay trapped many fleeing Norse fighters, turning their retreat into a slaughter. As the sun began to set, it became clear that Brian's army had triumphed. The Viking forces, along with their Leinster allies, were in disarray, their leadership shattered. But the victory came at a terrible price. Brian, who was around 70 at the time, did not personally fight in the battle. He remained in his tent, praying for victory. Yet in the chaos of the aftermath, retreating Norsemen discovered his camp. In a final act of vengeance, a group of fleeing warriors, led by a man named Brodir, found the High King and killed him, reportedly with an axe blow to the back of the head. His son, Murchad, and grandson, Terdelbach, also perished that day, leaving Ireland without a clear heir to carry on Brian's vision of national unity. The power vacuum that followed led to renewed regional rivalries and the slow unravelling of Brian's accomplishments. While the Battle of Clontarf has often been romanticised in later centuries as the day the Irish threw off the Viking yoke, it wasn't quite that simple. Norse influence in Ireland didn't end overnight. Dublin remained a Norse Gaelic kingdom for another century, and Viking settlers had long been intertwined with Irish society through trade, intermarriage, and political alliance. What Clontarf did mark, however, was a turning point. It signalled the beginning of the end for Viking political ambitions in Ireland. After the battle, no foreign king would ever again attempt to claim dominion over the entire island by force. The Norse towns, once centres of plundering, gradually evolved into commercial hubs. The battle also cemented Brian Boru's place as a national hero, a symbol of Irish resistance, unity, and tragic sacrifice. In the centuries that followed, poets and chroniclers would elevate Clontarf to near-mythic status. The Cogad Gaedhel Re Galev, the War of the Irish with the Foreigners, penned in the 12th century, framed Brian as a Christian warrior king who defended Ireland from heathen invaders, though the reality was far more tangled, with Christian Irishmen fighting on both sides. Today, the legacy of Clontarf endures not just as a military engagement, but as a powerful narrative of identity, sovereignty, and the human cost of power. On this day in 1014, Brian Boru won the greatest battle of his life, but at the cost of his own. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Ireland's rich past. Please like and subscribe. And until next time, I'm Raymond Welsh. Slán go foil.